All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining Marble Wellness for today's relationship-focused webinar. I'm Danica, the operations director, and our goal with Marble Wellness is to help families, couples, and individuals build healthy relationships with each other and the world around them. So today, we're excited to learn from Jake Bava, licensed professional counselor whose work supports teens, adults, and couples through life's toughest transitions. So welcome, Jake. I just really appreciate how you combine warmth, clarity, and practical expertise to guide clients toward stronger connections and emotional wellness. Today's session is going to dive into the renowned Gottman method and the 4 Horsemen, the 4 conflict behaviors that predict relationship breakdown, and their powerful antidotes for positive change. So welcome, Jake, and take it away.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to diving into this. This is probably one of my favorite topics to dive into when it comes to
Awesome.
couples therapy and stuff like this, because it feels so relatable. I feel like everybody at one point or another has experienced one of these 4 things. So it's just super, super helpful. But yeah, so starting off, like she said, my name is Jake Bava. I'm a licensed professional counselor. A little bit of background about me. I got my bachelor's at Ole Miss, so hotty toddy go Rebs. Love the SEC. I am a huge Dungeons and Dragons nerd and just prolific nerd in general. Everything from video games, fantasy books, movies, whatever, you name it, I'm probably into it to some degree. And I'm also just like a huge outdoorsy kind of guy. I'm an Eagle Scout and spent a little bit of time in Denver and really fell in love with the Rocky Mountains. So it's just kind of a little bit about me and, who I am. But moving on. So objectives for today, kind of what I was hoping we could get into is I really want to make sure that anybody that watches this, by the time we're done, you're able to identify and understand what the 4 horsemen are, as described by the Gottman method. You will also be able to identify and understand what the antidotes associated with each of the 4 horsemen are. And you'll hopefully walk away knowing how to apply these antidotes to your own relationships. And as my good friend Borat says, if we can get all 3 of these done, that's a great success.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So Jake, could you kind of start by sharing that brief overview of the Gottman method in case folks haven't heard of that, and then kind of talked about where those 4 horsemen come from and why they're such accurate predictors of relationship problems. I'm always fascinated by this.
Yeah, it really is super fascinating. So the Gottman method was a style of couple counseling developed by John and Julie Gottman, pictured here. They're just the most adorable little Jewish couple you ever met. They have made it their life's work to deep dive into every aspect of long-lasting relationships, whether it's marriages or any kind of a long-standing kind of romantic relationship. And they look at what are the things that make the long-lasting relationships so successful, and what are the things that cause those relationships to fall apart? What are the common issues that people run into? And so they really do kind of dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of this kind of stuff. Part of what really drew me to this style of couples counseling is the massive body of research and evidence that they've built up over the years. They have gotten to a point where they are able to accurately predict with about 80 to 90% accuracy whether or not a relationship would last as it currently stands.
So wild to me. Like,
you never see
it's like having a crystal ball. Yeah.
You never see numbers like that in this field. So they clearly tapped into something that's like really valid and really like crosses all sorts of demographics, cultural demographics, age, all sorts of different stuff. It's really powerful stuff. And so when it comes to the four horsemen, they kind of lean into the Christian metaphor of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which is talked about in the New Testament for those that come from a Christian background. And in the New Testament, they're referenced as these like messengers, these warning signs that, the end times are here. And so they took that same kind of metaphor and applied it to relationships, where these four characteristics, if they are present in a relationship, they are the warning signs. They are the messengers that, okay, things are going downhill. And if any one of these four characteristics are present in the relationship, it really is not a matter of like if, it's when. Like it's just a matter of time. Because these, you'll see as we kind of get into this, part of what makes these so insidious is that they just ratchet up and escalate conflict more and more and more as time goes on. So it really can get pretty toxic pretty quick if you don't do anything about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, really, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So let's actually look into what are these four horsemen. So broken down into four main categories here. We got criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Some of these are a little bit more self-explanatory, and you can kind of guess and get at what they mean just by the name of it. But we're going to go through each of these kind of individually, talk about what exactly this means and what the Gottmans are talking about and how they define them. What is it that they look like in relationship and what makes them so damaging? So to start off with, criticism. This is one of the ones that I think is a little bit more self-explanatory on the surface, but it can be commonly confused. One of the things that I think people kind of get confused with when it comes to criticism is like, oh, so I'm just like never supposed to bring up a problem or an issue that I have in a relationship. And no, that like human nature is you spend enough time around somebody else, you're gonna find something that gets under your skin. Like it's just gonna happen.
Absolutely.
So this isn't so much about like, oh, there should never be conflict or you should never have like a critique or anything like that, but more so like, how are you communicating them? And the big defining characteristic for criticism is that when you're providing that feedback or that critique, it's coming off as a personal attack on the other person's character. And so it's really more like targeted, more mean in that sense.
That's what the criticism is, rather than being like constructive feedback. Yeah.
It's not so much focused on behavior or what was said or what was not said, but God, you're just so lazy, or you never think about me, or you just don't care, or different things like that. It can look a lot of different ways, depending on the context, the situation, whatever the presenting issue may be. But it's targeting the individual's character rather than any kind of a behavior or something that happened,
Yeah, it's critiquing them as a person rather than like you said, the action, the situation, the behavior. Yeah,
exactly. And what makes this so toxic and so damaging to relationships is because it's an attack on the other person's character. You're not really actually talking about the issue that's at hand, and so it leads to this constant escalation, turning up of the heat. It's a lot like the tornado, where the speed and the intensity just goes up and up and up and up. So that's kind of what the Gottmans are referring to when it comes to criticism, and why their research has shown that it's so damaging.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Okay.
Next, we look at defensiveness. I like to think of defensiveness as like criticism's partner in crime.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, criticism and defensiveness, they're kind of a pair. They go hand in hand. One person may start off as criticizing the other, and then the natural response to that is to defend yourself. You want to kind of protect yourself from whatever that attack is. And again, that makes sense. It's a very logical kind of a response, kind of a cause and effect relationship.
It's a very human response, right? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Nobody likes to be targeted like that. And naturally, that's kind of why I had the boxer in that other side, because it's that instant, like, okay, my guard's up, let's go.
Yes, exactly.
But I think what differentiates defensiveness from the more natural protective instinct is you're dodging any kind of accountability. So lots of times defensiveness comes when there is kind of a nugget of truth to what may be being said. And rather than actually trying to listen and understand what is going on, you immediately dive into excuses. There's deflection. You're reversing the blame. No, this isn't my fault. That's your fault. And very much like criticism, this only goes to ratchet up the intensity of that conflict and continue the escalation, because we're not actually talking about what the issue is, but instead, when defensiveness comes in, you're really blaming your partner for whatever is going on. And so it's just this back and forth, where like whatever the core issue is stuck in the middle, not really being addressed, and you're just throwing punches.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that's defensiveness.
Nothing's getting done. Yeah.
It's super unproductive. It really is. And that I think that is part of what makes conflict like this, when these horsemen are present, so frustrating for couples, because you feel so stuck.
Absolutely.
And it feels impossible to make any kind of real progress or change.
Just kind of stuck in that cycle, and it just feels like you can't ever get out, or stuck in that tornado, right? Like, I'm trying to get out and it's just not happening. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Next, we have contempt. Think of this like criticism's meaner older sibling. Man, when contempt comes into a relationship, this is when things really start to look bad. A lot of what we see with contempt is, criticism is that attack on another person's character. Contempt is when the gloves really come off. This is when people start to just get really mean, and you start to see the name calling, the yelling, the screaming. There's just a ton of disrespect, maybe like a mocking tone. And a lot of it stems from this feeling of moral superiority that you have over your partner. So a kind of, classic example that you can see is, if you have a married couple with kids, and one partner stays at home and the other works, the other person may come home from work and they're, sitting down and relaxing and maybe not being as helpful around the house as the other may like. And rather than trying to ask for help, it's like, oh my God, you are so lazy. I can't believe you are so childish. You act like you're working all day. You think you're tired? Cry me a river. Like, I've been running around with these kids all day. I don't need another kid. Like, that's contempt. That's deep rooted. And again, really comes from this very mean place. It's like you're no longer just retaliating with a jab, but like you're going straight for the jugular. You're trying to just
Mm,
cause as much pain as possible to the other person.
yeah.
Uh,
Which we know the people who, like the people who love us the most, or, or we love the most, like we know where that
yep,
is. We know where that sweet spot is. Ugh, yeah.
yep.
Now I
You
see on
know just
here,
what buttons to push. You know what their insecurities are. You know what are the things that they're sensitive about. And so it's
yeah,
really, really easy when you have that close relationship to find
mm,
that and pull and tug and rip. And
absolutely.
one of the things I think that the Gottmans really emphasize with Contempt is this is probably the most significant of the four horsemen,
I
because
see
of all
that.
four of these, Contempt is the single greatest predictor of divorce. If
That's
contempt is
wild.
present in your relationship and you are not doing anything to address that,
Mhm.
it really is a matter of just when. It's just a ticking clock. Um, so this one gets a little bit scary.
Absolutely. Well, and obviously people who are watching this webinar are likely to be trying to help their relationship in some way,
Yeah.
whether it's early on, in a relationship and trying to protect, do some protective factors, and or if they're starting to think maybe something's going on. So, given that this is the single greatest predictor of divorce, what are some of those more subtle forms in which contempt shows up, and how can couples like spot these before they become part of that routine and just the way we talk to each other?
Oh, that's a great question. I really like that. I like that especially because um, on average, couples typically wait about 7 years after things get
Hmm.
bad before they start to look for professional help. So a lot of times it is those more subtle warning signs that start to creep in first. A lot of what I see in sessions when contempt is starting to bubble up, it can be things like constant eye rolling,
Mm,
a lot of sarcasm. Like if your partner's trying to communicate with you and it's immediately met with sarcasm and dismissal, like that could
mhm.
be kind of a negative sign. And another one that the Gottmans talk about, which I think can be really tricky, is the like use of dark humor. Humor
Mm,
can be a
interesting.
great coping skill, um, but I think you know when the humor is coming at the expense of your partner, and
Yeah.
you're like constantly punching down at them, and they're always the butt of the joke, that's a slippery slope. And so I've worked with couples that have just kind of a darker sense of humor, and that is just the way they communicate, and that's
Mm,
okay. And they both understand at the end of the day, like, hey, that was just a joke. And if things get taken too far, they're good at like catching that and tending to it. But a lot of times it's not necessarily the case. Or like one person will act like they're okay with it, but they're really
mm,
not because they don't want to cause an issue. Um, so I would
sure.
say those are some of the more like subtle signs of contempt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Moving on to the last one, we have stonewalling. So stonewalling is really, really interesting. You often see it as a response to contempt, but it really is not exclusive to that. Like we talked about the partnership between criticism and defensiveness, and
Hmm.
there is a little bit of that with contempt and stonewalling, but stonewalling comes up in a lot of other situations too. Um, the primary things that we see with like what stonewalling is the complete disengagement, pulling away, shutting down, and not engaging or interacting with your partner. Um, The reason why this gets coupled with contempt is because you can only take so much abuse before you feel the need to walk away.
Absolutely.
And it really comes from this place of being so overwhelmed with the emotion of whatever circumstance is going on. I work a lot with anger, especially in men. And so I will see stonewalling a lot in men where they get so pissed about whatever is going on. And they know, okay, if I continue, I'm going to punch a hole in the wall. Like, I'm going to blow up. And so it's kind of protective in the sense where it's like, in those circumstances, the men are stonewalling so that way they don't blow up. But it's still
go ahead.
So a lot of times too, you'll see this as like the cold shoulder or the silent treatment. You know, you have a really nasty fight and you don't talk to your partner for a couple days after. That's stonewalling. And it doesn't always have to be like just literal silence. A lot of times it's in more avoidant behaviors where maybe somebody, you know, is like, screw it, time to deep clean the house. And I'm going to put in my headphones and I'm going to, you know, listen to some music or whatever. And I'm just going to lock in on this stuff. Or I'm going to start pulling double shifts and working overtime at work. So that way I don't have to come home.
Right. But you can't be mad at me because I'm, you know, providing for the family or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So how does that differ from like taking time to cool off, right? Like I know for some people, especially people who've dealt with anger and, you know, they've like, that's an anger management strategy, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, take some time to cool off and then come back to it. Is it the not coming back to it?
And that I think is such a phenomenal question because it makes me think of this like old school marriage advice that I think a lot of people hear. Don't go to bed angry.
Don't go to bed angry. Yep.
I'm sorry to anybody that tries to follow that. It doesn't work.
Nope.
It doesn't work. It's horrible advice.
Yep.
There's no reason to stay up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and you're tired and the kids are crying and you have work in the morning. Like, no. Stop. So to answer that question of like, what's the difference there? The difference is there's no follow-up. The difference is that when you're dealing with anger and you need to take that moment to step away, there's follow-up. It's a conversation of, hey, I'm feeling really pissed off. I need like 20 minutes to cool off. And then you take that 20 minutes and then you come back.
Yes.
So oftentimes that never happens.
Yeah. Well, and I'm hearing some expectation management there too, right? Like I need 20 minutes or I need, you know, the kids are going to be home soon. We need to shelf this and, you know, try to get through the night. Can we, you know, address it at XYZ time, right? Like it's not just this unknown of, well, when's it going to come back up? Or, you know, how long am I going to just be sitting here stewing about it? And then things are getting worse, right?
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes too, that desire to want to resolve a conflict in the moment, it comes from anxiety. And because if stonewalling is present, there's probably a pattern of unresolved conflicts. A fight happens, something interrupts it, somebody disengages, and then it's never addressed again. And eventually the temperature cools off and you just try and act like nothing happened. And so it's like, no, we're not letting this happen. We're resolving this right now. But that's not always fair. It's not always realistic. So whether it's, you know, hey, I need 20 minutes or, hey, the kids are about to be home or hey, I got work in the morning, like whatever it is. The really important thing, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the antidotes, is like you need to have some sort of a follow-up, some sort of follow-through, that like the break is to calm down, not to avoid.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
so
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of the
Well, let's
four
get to those
horsemen.
antidotes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much doom and gloom. Oh my God. It's so dramatic in the presentation. And I always try to tell people, like just stick with it. I promise there is an answer. And these
Yes.
are the answers here. This is the antidote. So each of these four horsemen, part of the research that the Gottmans did is, they didn't just say like, oh wow, all of these negative things are really bad for relationships. That sucks. No, they looked for solutions, and they actually found a lot of good things that directly counter the impacts of these four horsemen. So for criticism, there's a framework and an approach that the Gottmans talk about, named the gentle startup. It's a way to, how to not sound like a jerk. Defensiveness, you'll talk about taking responsibility, and how to not avoid that lack of accountability. Contempt focuses on expressing feelings and needs, and we were just kind of talking about this with stonewalling. You have to be able to practice self-soothing. But yeah, these are kind of the four cures, the four antidotes.
Awesome. Good. That gives us hope, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Starting off with the gentle startup. So, as we mentioned with criticism, there's always going to be moments in relationship where you have a critique, there's an issue, there's something that needs to be talked about. So, really, the answer to this is how do we bring that up in a way that doesn't make you sound like a jerk? Three basic steps that go into the gentle startup. You have to express your feelings, clarify about what, and express the positive need. Important things to kind of note with these different steps. I feel like you're not doing enough around the house is not a feeling. That's an opinion. We're not talking about that. We're talking about feelings. I feel anxious. I feel nervous. I feel overwhelmed. I feel frustrated. I feel hurt. I feel disappointed. Like, look up an emotion wheel. I thought about putting one of those up as well.
Nice.
But if you don't know what that is, just Google emotion wheel. You'll find 12 different varieties of them. And they're super, super helpful tools for being able to identify what specific emotion is coming up in a given moment. But that's really what we're talking about, is the feelings, the emotions. Then you get into clarifying about what. This one's also kind of tricky, and you got to be careful with it. Because when you go into clarifying about what, this is not about pointing fingers. This is not about assigning blame. You have to stay neutral. You have to stay objective. We're just talking about the facts. What is the timeline? What is the sequence of events that led to you experiencing the emotions that are coming up now? Then, once you get through that, you can get into the positive need, which best way I've kind of found to describe the positive need is, you have Genie's lamp, you have a magic wand, you're able to collect all 7 of the Dragon Balls and you get your magic wish. Like, what does true resolution look like? What's the vision? What's the goal? What's the dream of how this can work out in a way that benefits everybody? So, if you ever like struggle, kind of like with that example I gave earlier of like, the one partner comes home and, say there's dishes laying all over the sink and trash is overflowing and laundry is thrown all over the place, rather than coming in and screaming and criticizing, oh my God, you're so lazy. What have you been doing all day? Instead, you can be like, okay, I'm feeling really anxious and kind of overwhelmed and frustrated because I spent all day at work, and Fred in financing was giving me hell all day. And I come home and I see that the sink is full of dishes, and the trash hasn't been taken out in a week, and the laundry is just scattered all over the place. Like, I'd really love if you and I could come up with some sort of a system where we can both work together to try and make sure these things are taken care of. That way we both can enjoy a clean, well put together home.
Absolutely. And it's kind of aligning with a common goal, hopefully. Yeah.
Exactly. It opens up
Awesome.
more collaboration. There's an emphasis on partnership here, which is critical to all of these different things.
Awesome. Love that. What's our next anecdote? Yeah.
We go into taking responsibility. This one sucks. I'm going to be honest.
Yep.
This one really sucks because nobody likes to do this. Nobody likes to admit when they're wrong. Nobody likes to kind of be told, hey, you messed up.
Yep.
But when it comes to defensiveness and taking responsibility in this, it doesn't mean that you're a doormat. It doesn't mean, okay, let me just fold over. Yes, everything is my fault. I'm the bad guy. I'm just, everything is on me. No, that's not what we're talking about. What it really means to take responsibility in this context is adopting your partner's perspective. It's being able to take a step out of your own shoes and into theirs. Think about how maybe they experienced things, and understand, even if it wasn't intended, even if it wasn't the initial goal, how maybe things went sideways for them. Like, even just taking 5% responsibility of whatever the problem may be makes a huge difference. And
that's great to hear. Yeah. Wow.
And ultimately, too, I know this kind of sounds like we're back in kindergarten, but you need to apologize.
Yes.
There's so many times where I see couples struggle with saying, I'm sorry. Even if they didn't mean it, even if it wasn't intended, even if you don't necessarily think you should say, I'm sorry. Sometimes we need to swallow our pride and just admit, like, hey, that's my bad. That's on me.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it softens things. It humanizes it. It allows for more empathy and connection. It totally changes the trajectory of the conversation. Next, we come back to contempt. So for contempt, I tell people to focus on expressing feelings and needs. Really, why this is so important is because when you're dealing with contempt and this constant like recurring pattern of moral superiority, you're trying to build a culture of respect and appreciation in the relationship. Contempt is that very like toxic, very mean, very hurtful kind of approach. And so we need to start integrating more kindness, more love and admiration into the relationship. Expressing feelings and needs is a great way to do that because, again, kind of similar to taking responsibility, it humanizes the other person. You shift the language from you to I. And now this is what I'm feeling. This is what I need. And it opens up more room for connection. It levels the playing field. Couple other things that the Gottmans recommend when it comes to tackling contempt is they have this go-to phrase of small things often, little moments of gratitude, expressing gratitude, expressing appreciation. Hey, thank you for everything that you do. Like, thank you for, taking the kids to school. Thank you for, whatever it may be,
Mhm.
little things. Hey, thanks for switching the laundry over. Like it does not
Yeah.
have to be big, but you
Mhm.
take those little things and you do them often, and it builds and builds and builds, and you create a stockpile of those
Mhm.
positive interactions. Uh, the kind of golden ratio, this is the other thing that the Gottmans talk about, is 5 to 1. 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction. Because again, the Gottmans are realists. They understand
Mhm.
that not everything is going to be sunshine and roses and rainbows.
Right.
But if you keep an eye on kind of the ratio of those interactions, and you do your best to make sure you got 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative,
Mhm.
you're making constant deposits into that emotional bank account. So that way, when the negative does come, you got something to withdraw. Um,
Yeah.
so expressing understanding, generating that empathy, allowing space for connection, that's what all of this is about.
Yeah.
Finally,
It's wild. Yeah. And I can just see where that would make such a big difference to just build that, like you said, culture of appreciation ahead of time, if you will,
yes,
right? And like just have that be the norm
yeah,
so that then yeah, that assuming good intention and all of that can be the
you
norm as
have to
well.
take a very preventative approach when it comes to countering contempt.
Yeah.
Like that you have to work
Mm.
at it constantly. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not a flip a light switch and boom,
Yeah.
we're done.
Yeah.
It takes time, and you have to be very intentional with it. Um,
Love that. Taking a positive approach to countering contempt. Thank you.
yep. Lastly, we're at stonewalling. You got to practice self-soothing. So I always like to emphasize again, why is it that people stonewall to begin with?
Mhm.
The reason why stonewalling happens is because we get completely overwhelmed with the emotion. Um, Many people don't think about this, but emotions are physical as much as
Mhm.
they are mental. There are physiological responses and cues to every emotion that we experience on a day to day basis. When you feel angry, frustrated, anxious, nervous, heart rate can increase. You may feel sweaty or like physically hotter. There's tension in your shoulders and in your chest and
Mhm.
all these other different things. If you're feeling sad or depressed or downtrodden, humiliated, embarrassed, guilty, then like your body language starts to like curl up more. You start to shut down. You maybe feel a pit in your stomach. Um, all those different kinds of things. Those are physical cues that we can tap into to be able to better understand where we're at emotionally. And so being able to recognize that when it happens, again, it's kind of like with the anger thing, it keeps you from blowing up. And so we have to address that. We have to make sure that we're
Mhm.
regulated and deal with the flood that's coming in before we can have any sort of a clear communication. Um, and so lots of different ways to go about doing this, tons of different skills for
Mhm.
emotional regulation. And this is really a little bit of a case of trial and error. You got to see what works
Mm.
best for you. I default to a couple different things. Deep breathing, specifically box breathing, which is this little
Mhm.
graphic that I have on the side. You take a deep breath in, you hold, and then you breathe out, and then you hold. And that forces our bodies to slow down. It's used by endurance athletes, like the
Mhm.
crazy, like ultra marathon runners. I never understood how they do that for a long time, but then I learned about this.
Right.
Oh, that kind of makes more sense. But so that's one thing that is really, really effective. And something I always go to for my very angry clients is wall pushes. You find any kind of a flat wall doesn't matter what. Put your hands flat on the wall and you press as hard as you possibly can, like you're trying to bulldoze your way through the wall. And you do that for about 10, 15 seconds, take a step back, take some deep breaths, check in. Am I still pissed off? Yep. Okay, let me go back and do it again. I myself have done that 5, 6, 7 times in a row if I'm feeling like really pissed off. And it's wildly effective. It's really, really
Awesome.
great. But those are some of the skills that go into how to practice that self-soothing and handle those big emotions whenever they come up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Kind of figure out what people need for them, what works more for you, in any given circumstance. Awesome.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And
All right. So how do we turn this into a habit? How do we do this?
Exactly. How do we do this? First things first, we need awareness. Mm-hmm. So I always encourage a curiosity mindset when it comes to this kind of stuff. And it's not just curiosity about like, oh, how is my partner doing these different things? But it's also, we also have to look inwards. We also have to be objective and curious about, okay, what ways am I playing into this? And where do I show up in some of these different horsemen?
Yeah.
I also think it's really important too, like if you're not in a couples therapy context, you need to have a conversation with your partner. It takes more than just one person being aware. Both people need to know and be actively working towards this. And so you take that curiosity mindset, you transfer that over to an honest conversation with your partner and look at like, okay, where do you think these are coming up? And seeing like, what is it that we need to work on? Because again, not all 4 of these may be present in your relationship. It may be just 2 or even just 1 out of the 4.
Sure.
So you got to like figure out what is it that we need to work on. And then once you do, practice, 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 practice. It's the biggest thing. It's the only way you get to really do the thing. You hop on a bike for the first time and it feels clunky and awkward and you may fall off and scrape your knee, but the more time you spend in the seat, the more time you spend pedaling, the longer distance you go, it starts to feel natural. It starts to feel easy. You start to wonder, how did I do this any other way? So it really is just about getting those reps in, practice.
So then what should someone do, or what should a couple do if these techniques aren't enough, or if that conflict escalates despite trying the anecdotes, despite doing, more research, all of that? Like, when is it, definitely time to seek that professional support?
I encourage people to take a more preventative approach when it comes to couples counseling. I think that in a lot of ways, the stigma around mental health has gotten a lot better in recent years. It's not entirely gone though. And I think that couples counseling especially is one of those places that we still see a lot of stigma, because there's these assumptions that, we have to be married if we're going to do couples counseling. There has to be some sort of a, massive crisis. Somebody cheated on somebody else, or there's, domestic abuse, or something else of that nature. Again, on average, couples wait 7 years after things get bad before they seek professional help. So if you try some of these things and it still feels like it's not enough, then that is probably when I would say reach out and try to get some professional help.
For sure.
I listed here, and it's also in the banner right
Appreciate
below
it.
me.
Awesome.
We got the general office line where you can talk to our wonderful intake coordinators. They do a great job at getting you set up with a therapist that they think would be best for you, whether it's me or one of the other amazing therapists at Marble. Or if you're terrified of making a phone call, you can always shoot an email.
Yep.
And same team of people will respond and help you get set up.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I'm glad you talked about that. Of course, if folks are, looking to work on their relationship, learn more about the Gottman method, or really wanting that tailored support for those conflict patterns, our Marble Wellness clinicians are here for you.
Yeah.
And that can be couples therapy, that could be individual sessions,
Yep.
or even just kind of a consultation to figure out, how it's best to get started. You can visit our website to, take the next step. So thank you, Jake, for
Yeah.
sharing such actionable
Absolutely.
insights. I appreciate it.
This really
Is there
just
any final
barely scratches
advice?
the surface of
Oh
the
yeah,
Gottman method. There is
yeah,
so much more that we could go into. We could spend
absolutely.
hours going over all of the different things.
Absolutely. Well, and if folks are, if there's something else you're really interested in, definitely share a comment. Let us know what you want to hear more about, and we can do this again. I had fun. So I
Same.
appreciate it. Yeah, good. Any kind of final words before we wrap up?
You know, I think a lot of times I hear couples during the intakes and stuff like that. They'll want a kind of direct answer of like, okay, do you think this can work? Like, is there hope? And the answer that I have for everybody is I really, truly, genuinely think that there's always hope. If,
Mm,
as long as both people are willing to show up and put in the work and do what's needed to change the relationship, it can work. It
I love that.
only stops when one or the other person bows out.
It's done.
Like
Yeah.
if you're both locked in, if there's both commitment on both ends, then yeah, it'll work.
I love that. Oh, I love that. Yeah, definitely closing with some hope, giving
Yep.
folks, that hope. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for, to everybody for prioritizing your relationship and showing up for this growth.
Yep.
So, on behalf of Jake and Marble Wellness, we wish you all the best, that connection and care. Thank you all so much.
Yep. See you guys.